All right, fellas, let's move on to the Western Conference, and we're going to start down in the Oklahoma University alumni party down in Dallas with Bob Stoops. Pastel, why don't you kick us off? Who stood out to you in Bob Stoops' draft?
Yeah, so there was definitely a lot of Oklahoma players that was drafted by the Dallas Renegades. But some of the players that I like and that stood out to me were one, Jeff Bidet, Tommy Lee Lewis, Stacy Coley, Willie Beavers, Ryan Broyles, Trey Watson. But most of the theme for this whole draft class was speed, speed, speed. I mean, a lot of these guys 40 times were 4.27, 4.4, 4.39. They have a tight end, Donald Parham, that is 6'8", 240 pounds, ran a 4.6 He had caught 13 touchdowns with 1,300 yards his senior year at Stetson University. I mean, guys, I know they have some pretty good running backs on their team as well, like Lance Dunbar. But I don't know if they're ever going to run the football, honestly, with a team like that. But Lance Dunbar, guys, I was kind of doing some research on him. Can you imagine going to work right where you used to work in Dallas Cowboys Stadium? As you're pulling up to the stadium, you're like, oh, that's not my parking spot anymore. It's one stadium to the left. I mean, come on. You're going from Cowboys Stadium to the Rangers.
Do you ever do one of those things where you do something over and over and it becomes habit, and then you do something, you're like, why did I just take this turn, or why am I going this way? I could just see him going to work and pulling into the freaking Dallas Cowboys facility and being like, oh,
the security guards, hey Lance, it's mini camp season. What are you doing?
What are you doing here? But I like what you say, Brandon, about the speed on that offense, man. I know we've talked before about how Mummy being the OC there. He's got so many toys to play with to run that air raid offense. It's going to be so fun to watch. And Landry Jones just has to be licking his chops to throw to these guys.
What stood out to me is their running backs that they drafted. They really have a balanced attack when it comes to the running backs. Their first selection was Cameron Artis-Payne out of Auburn. Spent some time in the league. He's more of your bruising between the tackles type of running back. He's not going to blow you away with his speed. You can see right here going between the tackles. And then they go Dimitri Flowers, shocker, Oklahoma guy. And this guy, he's a lot different than Cameron Artis-Payne. He's not going to be running the ball too much. I don't even know why he's listed as a running back, because the damage that this guy produces is in the passing game. You can see here he's a big body guy. He's like 6'2", 6'3", 240, 50 pounds. But the guy has hands, he has body control, and he makes plays. At Oklahoma, you can see all the different ways that they got him involved. And I can see Bob Stoops doing the exact same thing in Dallas. And then Lance Dunbar, who you mentioned, Pastel, he's a really kind of change the pace type of guy. You can use him in the screen game, get him outside, and let him do his work. So they really kind of balanced the attack when it came to the running back core, to keep defenses honest.
And the strength's gonna be with the offense. And some guys that I had question marks on the defense is guys like John Franklin III from East Mississippi. Remember Last Chance University? The old quarterback from Florida State University, played at Auburn as a wide receiver, and then he transitioned to cornerback with the Chicago Bears. Guys like that, you draft kind of higher in your drafts, where I don't see is going to be a big impact for their team. So I think they have a strength on offense, but I do question some of their talent on the defense.
Yeah, one guy I do like on defense is the guy they picked first in the front seven phase, Haloli Kakaha, out of University of Washington. Yeah. He was a unanimous All-American edge rusher, obviously first team All Pac-12 guy. Started all 4 years at UW and was really wreaked a lot of havoc right off the edge. So I think Dallas really got a great pass rusher right there with Haloli Kakaha, and I think you're going to see his impact really early in the season.
So let's move on to LA. Kenny, I mentioned it earlier in the show. In the skill phase, I think LA freaking knocked it out of the park. Luis Perez has a ton of weapons to choose from, and it starts with their first round pick, Elijah Hood. Pastel, I'm not sure if you remember Elijah Hood back in 2016.
Yeah, North Carolina.
No, 2015. He was first team All ACC. He torched Virginia Tech. 117 yards, 2 touchdowns. He averaged almost 7 yards per carry. He did that to everybody. That's the one year where he really put it together and showed what he's capable of. He was the 4th ranked running back coming out of high school into college. So he, He's a highly touted guy. He doesn't have the blow-away speed. He's more of an in-between, a first and second down type of running back. I think he ran like a 4.57 at the combine, but he has some serious vision. He has some good body control. So I think, getting him in the first round gives you that anchor in your backfield that you need. And then moving over to receiver, they have a stable of studs for Luis Perez to throw to. Rashad Ross was their first pick. He led the AAF in reception yards. He led the league in touchdowns, 7 touchdowns. Oh, no, so he was second in the league to Charles Johnson in touchdowns, but he led the league in yards. And then Nelson Spruce, I know, Kenny, that you're high on him. 2-time second-team All-Pac-12. He set 43 school records at Colorado. Dude is a stud.
Oh, absolutely. He can run every single route on the route tree. He's quick. He's got sure hands. He's one of the most prolific wide receivers in Pac-12 history. I mean, think of all the great wide receivers who've come out of the Pac-12. And when he graduated, he was number 1 all time in receptions. He's since been passed. He's now number 2. But I mean, to be that elite in the Pac-12 as a receiver is just, it's not easy. And he did it on a Colorado team that wasn't overly awesome. They weren't great. Right. So a lot of the production was on his own. As much as I like what the Guardians did, I think the best wide receivers in the league are Katie Cannon, Kearis Garrett, and Nelson Spruce, Rashad Ross. I think LA hit a grand slam with those 4.
Yeah, you mentioned Katie Cannon, 2016 first team All Big 12. The guy had 87 receptions. His senior year, 1,200 yards, 13 touchdowns. He lacks the experience in the route tree. At Baylor, they ran more of a simple type of offense. So he needs some work in that department. But when you match him up with Nelson Spruce and Rashad Ross, holy crap, are those some weapons. And then you have Hood coming out of the backfield. That's a potent offense that Norm Chow and Winston Moss are creating in LA. Yep. On the defensive side, I mean, we're going to jump to the 5th phase, but I think we all know who the name here in the entire draft maybe was, and that's Sean Oakman. Pastel, I know you're big on Sean Oakman. If anything, stealing from Pastel, the guy that gets off the bus and scares the crap out of the other team, that's your Sean Oakman. We'll see if he can get that glory back from his 2014 third-team All-American honors. He had 52 tackles, 20 for loss, 11 sacks his junior year. He decided to stay for his senior year, got into some legal trouble, didn't get drafted, and he's trying to work his way back. But obviously the physical tools, I mean, the guy is a monster.
Well, the skill set's there as well. I mean, the guy was really good. Like you just said, 11 sacks his junior year. I mean, I understand he had a little bit of a down year his senior year, but I think he just needed a little bit more time. Which is why I think the XFL is a perfect league for him. He's going to get back in there, show his skill set off again, develop a little bit more, and then, man, dude, this guy's 6'8", 280 pounds with a 12-pack. He's Thor, the guy, man.
He's the guy you want to make sure goes out to the coin toss, shakes the hands with the referees and the other team's quarterback. That's a guy I want on my team.
Oh, absolutely.
They also pick up Tywin Jones, linebacker from Michigan State. He was a second-team All-Big Ten player. He totaled 183 tackles throughout his career at Michigan State, so they got a guy to anchor the defensive linebacking core. So they have some playmakers on both sides of the ball. I'm really excited with LA's draft. I think they did a good job. We'll see how the lines do, but in terms of skill position-wise, I think they did very well.
Agreed.
All right, well, let's move on. Glessner, you have some guys in the Seattle roster that you really were targeting.
I do, and I love what they did at the skill position spots, and I'll highlight a couple guys along the way. But first, I want to touch on the running backs that they got. Trey Williams and Kenneth Farrow, really a thunder and lightning kind of combination. Trey Williams, really kind of a scat back, a guy you can use out of the backfield. You can see right there, really is a good guy, can slice and dice defense. Really got that great breakaway speed. Look at that. Look at him go right there.
Spent some time with the Redskins there.
A little bit of time with Redskins, not too bad, but really he reminds me a lot of Chris Thompson from the Redskins, right? I mean, he catches the ball really well out of the backfield. The other guy, Kenneth Farrow, is, when I talk about the thunder piece of this, that's this guy right here. Big, physical running back.
He runs hard.
And he was great at Houston, and he was great in the AAF as well. So I'm really excited to see how Mike Riley and Jim Zorn use Trey Williams and Kenneth Farrow at the running back position. What I really love that they did was the receiving core. So you got Keenan Reynolds. He was the quarterback who ran the triple option at Navy, right? So he's going to be kind of that all-purpose guy. Fred Ross is the all-time leader in Mississippi State history for receptions. And then I think is Jake Amaro out of Texas Tech. And he set the NCAA single-season records for yards by a tight end. So he's going to have a tight end that's going to be able to really get out, run some routes, catch some deep balls. Fred Ross, who's just a catching machine. And then Keenan Reynolds, you can use him in a lot of different ways, whether it's on different trick plays, packages, but you have to account for him on every play. So I'm really excited what they did on that front. Offensive line, I think there's some promising pieces. Definitely some guys who had gone through some legal troubles. So I don't know how that's going to turn out. On the defensive line, kind of the same thing. A lot of journeymen, but the one guy really like they got, and I'll touch on him on a later segment, is Will Sutton. He was first-team All-American, Pac-12 Player of the Year in 2012 for Arizona State. Just an absolute beast up front. Reminded me a lot of Ndamukong Suh in college, just in the Pac-12, just terrorized quarterbacks. And then in the secondary, had two really good guys. They had Chris Davis out of Auburn. You guys remember him? He was guy who took the kick all the way back to beat Alabama in the Iron Bowl, right? Kick six. And then the other guy, looking at him, and I think this guy may be one of the best secondary players in all of the XFL when it's all said and done, and that's Kentrell Bryce. And he started for the Green Bay Packers last year at safety for the majority of the season. And because of injuries, he got inactive at the end of the year, and then he got cut right at NFL cut time. Here this last August, but I have a really good feeling that he's going to be a big-time stud for the Seattle Dragons in the secondary.
I thought it was very interesting that Seattle, with their first two picks, Jim Zorn, like a week before the draft, was doing an interview, and he said something to the effect of, they're going to throw the ball a ton, like 90% of the time, a ton. And then they turn around and they draft two running backs.
No, first two picks. But if you look at Trey Williams, he's kind of made for that, right? I mean, he's a guy that's going to be a mismatch nightmare with linebackers and even nickelbacks. And that's kind of really his forte. He's kind of that scat back, a guy you can catch out of the backfield. And then just look at the receiving core. Keenan Reynolds, Fred Ross, and then Jake Amaro. I mean, it's going to be a heck of a receiving core for Brandon Silver is going to be able to throw to.
I'm sure Mike Riley had something to do with that as well from his AAF. He was coach of the Commanders, and what do you know? Williams and Farrow were teammates with the San Antonio Commanders. So it's a small world, right?
They're going to be fun to watch on offense, though. I think they're going to be one of the more fun offenses that we'll talk about all year long. I really do. They got a lot of playmakers on the offensive side of the ball.
All right, so let's go ahead and wrap it up with Houston and the Roughnecks. Kenny, what did you think of the Houston Roughnecks draft?
I thought their draft was one of the most unique and interesting drafts because of their first pick, Connor Cook. Yep. Do we have a quarterback controversy already, or is it like Pastel said, where they think, maybe Philip Walker might not be in the XFL very long. He could be back in the NFL very soon. So is it an insurance pick? Is it that they maybe they had to hit Philip Walker and Connor Cook similarly rated and saw an opportunity to get two guys that high on their allocation board? Who knows? But it's very interesting because you didn't see anybody else draft a quarterback that high after the allocations were announced. So extremely interesting on that end. Connor Cook, solid NFL experience, a solid quarterback at one of the best quarterbacks ever at Michigan State, won a ton of big games for him, has the physical tools, but hasn't really necessarily been able to put it all together. So who knows what's going to go on there. So I thought that was super interesting. Another guy they picked, Sammy Coates, an absolute burner at wide receiver. I believe had over 20 yards per catch 3 years straight at Auburn, was an absolute best vertical threat for Pittsburgh when he played there. And I believe he took over from Martavis Bryant when Martavis Bryant had his off-the-field issues.
Yeah, so he did. You're right on that.
Yeah, he was the guy who stepped right in and became that deep vertical threat. Another receiver I liked that they had was Jalen Saunders. Again, another speed guy. He was a 100-meter track champ in high school. He's kind of bounced around the NFL. He's played for a handful of teams and some CFL teams. But again, more speed. And then another guy on the offensive line who I really like and might go down as the best name of the draft so far or in the league, Gerard DeBeer. He was an elite discus thrower out of South Africa before he came over to the United States. He played rugby and was discus. And then he played football at the University of Arizona. So he hasn't played football that long. He's 6'6", 312, and everybody knows as a rugby and a discus player, you have to have good feet. You have to be athletic. So I'm excited to see if he can kind of, really develop as a player and move to the next level potentially, or become a franchise offensive tackle for Houston. And then you have Coney Eli. It's well documented how good he was. 2nd-round pick out of Missouri. Played for the Panthers, the Pats, the Jets, and the Raiders as early as last season. So it'd be interesting to see if he can maybe get his career on track. 6'4", 275, big stud guy. KJ Dillon is headlining the secondary, a safety out of West Virginia. Played for the Texans, the Cardinals, and then most recently the Hotshots in the AAF, but was a 5th-round pick for the Texans. Really good ball skills as a safety. And another guy I really like in their secondary is Marquestion Huff. Played for the Jags. I remember when the Jags worked him out and brought him in. I remember him being a really high pick from Wyoming, a smaller school, but I remember him having a lot of ball skills, had a great nickname, Quest, and just was really someone they thought was going to be that center fielder, and it just kind of never worked out in the NFL. So really exciting to see if him and KJ Dillon can really tandem pair up together and make the Roughnecks a pretty imposing secondary.
One of the names that stood out to me, Kenny, here when I look in Phase 5, Joe Horn Jr.
Yes.
I was like, oh my goodness, look at this, man.
Yes.
I feel like it was yesterday. Joe Horn was whipping a cell phone out of a goalpost pad.
Best celebration ever. I love that. That's one of my favorites. But yeah, I mean, he's definitely got the pedigree. Let's see if there's some talent that's rubbed off and maybe he can take that next step and really kind of replicate things his dad did at the professional level. If he's even half the receiver his dad was at the professional level, the Roughnecks have a really good draft pick.
Kenny, did you mention Cam Phillips at all? Or was that
I did not.
That was an on-purpose
not.
omission, huh?
It might have been, but you want to bring him up. I know you're the resident Virginia Tech guy, Riley, and to be honest, that wasn't intentional. But why don't you tell us a little bit about him?
Yeah, he's the all-time leading receiver at Virginia Tech in reception yards and catches. And there's been pretty good receivers that went through Virginia Tech, but he's not a burner. Mm-hmm. He's a smaller guy. He's more of a possession type of receiver. He runs nice, crisp routes. So I imagine him matching up with a Sammy Coates very well, who is obviously a more vertical threat. So for more of those underneath kind of routes across the middle, Cam Phillips is going to excel. So I think Sammy Coates opening up the field is going to give opportunities for Cam Phillips down in Houston.
Yeah, I love the resume. I love what you said about what he's done at Virginia Tech. And you're right, man. There's been a ton of talent that's come through Tech. So to do what he did statistically at Tech is no small feat. And I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up one of their draft picks, Andre Williams. Obviously, Heisman finalist, Jim Brown Award winner, Doak Walker Award winner, unanimous All-American. He had an absolute monster senior season at Boston College, but he didn't really, I don't know, he doesn't really fit to me on this team. Like it just
he just doesn't fit in the run and shoot.
No, it doesn't
match
he's
his
very
style of play.
Yeah, he's very limited. He's kind of a plotter. He's a bigger guy. He's more physical. I'm not saying he's going to be a bad draft pick for him, because I think anybody who's got that kind of resume isn't necessarily a bad pick, but I just don't know schematically if he's a great fit for the team.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how they get him involved, because Kyle Hicks, their 4th round pick, that guy fits the run and shoot perfectly. I could see him tearing things up in June Jones' offense. But then they bring in Andre Williams. Maybe it's just for a change of pace. Maybe strictly for goal line purposes. Who knows how they get him involved. But, I mean, the resume is obviously there from his days at Boston College. So they'll have to find ways to get Andre Williams involved.
Yeah, you guys kind of called it. I mean, the run and shoot, the old run and shoot when it was invented was under center, but nobody's been under center in the run and shoot since, I don't know, the 60s.
Warren Moon.
Right? Yeah, Warren Moon, I guess, in the 70s and the 80s. But it'll be really interesting to see how they use Andre Williams, because I just don't see him being used anything other than a blocking back, right? Being able to pick up somebody on the edge maybe. But, I don't know. Generally, they run a lot of shovel passes. They may run a zone play here or there, but I don't know. I'm with you guys. I'm not sure this is a great schematic fit.
Yeah.
No.
So out of the go ahead, pass.
Let's not kid ourselves though. The talk of their draft is the fact that they drafted a quarterback with their first overall pick. And there's many different reasons why they could have done that. One, they could have thought that maybe Philip Walker goes to the NFL. Two, they might not think Philip Walker's that good. And let's be honest, after Connor Cook, who else is as good as Connor Cook? I think there's a drop-off after Connor Cook. So they might be thinking, hey, let's get Connor Cook. In case our starting quarterback gets hurt, we have the next best guy in the draft to fill right back in and keep our team apart. But I do think it's very interesting that they picked Connor Cook number 2, man.
And they're such different quarterbacks in terms of their style of play. Yeah, I just don't understand how it fits. I mean, I agree with you, Pascal. I see Connor Cook ahead of some of the guys on the Tier 1 list. If he was a Tier 1 quarterback, I'd be probably putting him, somewhere in the middle of that list. But when you look at him fitting in the run and shoot, I mean, he's totally different than a Philip Walker. So usually when you bring in a guy to be your backup, you try to find a guy that fits the mold of your offense. So if you lose your starting quarterback, your backup can come right in and, he fits in what you're trying to do. You don't have to totally flip everything you're doing. So yeah, I just don't know if they're going to be searching for their identity, and when it comes training camp, they're going to see who wins out and kind of takes the reins of this team and then mold the offense around them. It's just an interesting fit because the two quarterbacks, their styles don't match at all.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun though. It's gonna be good to see a QB battle in training camp. I mean, we don't have a lot of training camp stories, but that's definitely gonna be one of them as we go through the offseason is who's gonna win the quarterback position in that training camp. And I would not be surprised if it's Connor Cook, as much as I am high on Philip Walker.
I think one thing's for certain, whoever's at quarterback, the run and shoot and June Jones, it's going to be an exciting brand of football down in Houston. I think when you look at the West overall, you have some amazing offensive minds. It's pretty impressive with June Jones, Hal Mummy, Norm Chow. I mean, these are big-time offensive guys. So it'll be interesting to see how they implement these players as we head towards 2020. What's up, football fans? This is Riley from XFL Chalk Talk. Subscribe to our YouTube channel and hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date on all things XFL and interact with us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, at XFL Chalk Talk.